Welcome everybody to the Lexit War Room. We have a special guest today, a good friend of ours. You guys all remember last time we were pushing really hard for him, but he's a really good friend of Lexit. He's a conservative out here in California. He's running for governor, Anthony Trimino.
Hey, Jesse, how are you? Lexit family, it's a good to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you always, brother, have you on. Because not only you're a candidate, you're just our friend. I know Carmen loves you to death, so you're friends with all of us.
Yeah, it's nice meeting you too.
We also got Toro.
Good meeting you. Yeah.
We got Toro over here on the Lexit War Room. He's filling in for A-Rod. But I wanted to start it off with you, brother, is that's good that you're running again, because we see that there's a lot of candidates over here in California that they didn't seem to run again, that they're not running this time. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Like, what made you decide to run again?
Sure. So if you remember in the beginning, this is not technically me running again. This is just me continuing to run. So when I got into this last year now, it sounds like so far away, but when I got into this last year, it was for the general. And that's initially what we got into it to do. So we knew that the general was happening November 2022. That was our focus. Everyone around us said, don't even get involved if you're just doing this for the recall. The runway's too short. It's going to get crowded. If your heart's in it, if you really believe in helping California, get into it for the long run. And we did. And then the recall got certified. And so then we obviously filed our paperwork for the recall. But we have not stopped running, even though from the period of September 14th till January 1st, we were somewhat quiet with messaging. We did not stop. I was at rallies. I was at, events. I was speaking up on behalf of our kids at school board meetings. I was doing, little rallies and really going up and down the state, building a coalition of people who would get behind us in this phase two. That's what we're calling it, the phase two of the campaign, and really come behind us. And so that's what we're doing. This is just a continuation of something that we set out to do early last year. And what's exciting is that, as you said, there are a lot of candidates who have basically showed the extent to which they were involved, right? They were in the recall, and then they kind of just disappeared, right? So many of those candidates just vanished, and they pulled themselves out unofficially. And then recently, within the last couple of weeks, a few of them have actually officially pulled themselves out. So it's kind of created this gap and this opportunity for us to continue to stand up for California, communicate our message. And, as of right now, I think I'm kind of on the field by myself, continuing to fight, continuing to run, and continuing to do what we've set out to do from the beginning. So nothing has changed for us. It's just that as of January 1st, we decided to just kind of ramp it up, to really go full bore and to hit the ground running. And that's what we've been doing.
To me, like, I don't want to say no names, brother, but to me, it seems like a lot of the candidates just took the money and ran. You know what I mean? Especially because a lot of ones not running are the big money ones, are the ones that were like the top. So you would think that they would be running again. You know what I mean? But
I learned a lot in the initial process. I learned that for a lot of people, running for office can be very lucrative and profitable for them. And so if you're a lifelong politician, all you've got is the next race. And a lot of these politicians, that's what they do. They go from race to race to race, because that's what sustains them. That's their income. It's their livelihood. And you see a lot of these celebrities and other people they got in, again, they found it to be lucrative and are taking a lot of that momentum and that money and doing any number of things. But our campaign was never focused on making me a lifelong candidate or a politician. I have absolutely no desire to be a lifelong politician. My only desire is to go to Sacramento, undo all the things that have been done unjustly, unconstitutionally, and then create a path for somebody behind me that's relevant at that time to come and take over, and I go back into commerce. And I think that's honestly how our country should be. I think we should have term limits, and I don't think we should have politicians that build careers out of being politicians. I think normal people, business people, and people in the community and social activists should rise up. They should serve, get elected, hold an office, because that's American. And then they should get out of the way and allow somebody who's relevant at that time to take over. But we have a lot of politicians who have been around for decades. They've lost sight of society. They're disconnected from our youth. It's crazy. So yeah, I mean, the path has been cleared, and we're continuing to fight the fight.
Yeah, what I really respect about you is that you're like one of the only, I seen you and maybe Sarah Stevens, a few other, not really, but that I've seen since after the election, after you guys lost or whatever, that you kept staying in the fight. You were still like even more so at rallies against the COVID. Like you were out there, like a lot of the other candidates, like I said, I ain't gonna say no names, but a bunch of them, all those ones, they were talking all that talk, but as soon as that they lost, they're crickets. You don't even see them no more. They ain't helping. They ain't doing nothing. But that was one thing I respected about you, is that even as soon as you lost, you were still out there at rallies. You were still out there even pushing harder, showing that you're in the fight. So your heart was really
issue. It's an issue about integrity and character, right? So if you went around during the recall telling everybody that your heart was for California, your heart was for families, businesses, you really cared, then it should have absolutely nothing to do with the election itself. That election or no election, you should still continue to fight this fight. You should still continue to carry the torch. And so I was just disappointed too with the landscape of candidates where, come September 14th, they just dropped off. And I was like, look, there's still a fight here. There's still, okay, so he's in office, right? Till at least another year. Is there not still a fight? Are we still not fighting for our kids, our rights, our bodies, our businesses? Nothing has changed. The need hasn't changed, just the rules of the game changed. And so regardless, I was still focused on making sure that everybody knew, like, legitimately, this is a hard thing. I got into this because I believe somebody needs to do something about this. And for me, I'm a believer in your actions tell the whole story, right? We can talk a lot. We can say a lot of things, but ultimately, and I teach this to my kids, it's you'll know by their fruit, right? You know a man, a person by their fruit, and their fruit is kind of what they produce. And so if anybody looks at from day one of us starting the campaign till now, there's been we've been completely consistent with our effort, our messaging, our time, our focus. Nothing has changed. So at least we can say that about ourselves, and that I'm proud about.
Amen, brother, because, like they say, action speaks louder than words, what I'm saying? But go ahead, Carmen.
Yeah, so some of the same talking points, we've talked behind the scenes a lot about all of those candidates, like 45, let's say, candidates, right? And I kept saying, I feel like so many of these candidates are just throwing a bunch of things at the wall to see what sticks, right? Like that's what I looked at all those candidates as, because it didn't really seem like they were all going to be in it for the long haul. Looks like we lost Jesse for a second. Mm-hmm. He'll be back. And we said that same thing behind the scenes. We were like, okay, we're going to see who's real by who's still around after the recall is over. Because I knew that 90% of the candidates were not in it for the long haul. I knew that 90% of the candidates were not going to continue the fight. And I kept saying, we're fighting against these mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, and everything else. And it's just parents and regular people at these, these meetings and petitioning our legislators, petitioning our boards. And I kept saying, where are the rest, all these gubernatorial candidates, 45, where are they? Where are they? The only person I saw out on the battlefield still was you. And you were doing your We Are Still Heroes, and you were out there still rallying, and you were still fired up. And we had a meeting, and you said that, you guys, I'm not done. I'm just beginning, right? Yeah. And I saw that in you immediately, that you were so passionate about what had happened the last 9 months of your life that you finally were like, okay. I mean, it seems like it stoked an even bigger flame in you, to me, from the outside looking in. So that was refreshing. And then
it made me angrier, because I was alongside a lot of these individuals on stages, at rallies, speaking, and I'm hearing them talk. And I'm like, after the recall, I'm like, where are you?
Yeah.
Like forget about, so now we're not competing against each other. Okay. Well, why are we not fighting together for California? Why are we still not sharing stages together? Why are we still not at rallies together fighting for California? It didn't make any sense to me. There was this funny thing. I was at church this last Sunday, and we had a guest pastor, and he was talking about God wanting to raise a generation of finishers. And it just kind of, it spoke to me, because that's kind of what we're talking about, is that 46 people started something, but how many people are actually committed to finishing it, right? And he was talking about how half obedience is the equivalent of no obedience. You can't just be half obedient. So if these individuals truly believed that our kids were in danger, the family unit was in danger, businesses are in danger, our bodily autonomy is in danger, what happened on September 15th? It was no longer that important. We were no longer in danger. If anything, September 15th, the administration was emboldened. The day after the recall, LA went into implementing a vaccine verification platform across the county. The very next day, 4 days later, Newsom signs a bill to pave a way for 11 and 12-year-old girls to get sex changes and abortions on your insurance without your consent. That was all within the first week of the recall. Knowing that he was going into an election year, if he'll do that on the heels of millions of people saying that you need to go, on the eve of going into an election year, just imagine what he'll do this December if he stays in office. So, yeah, I mean, I would challenge all of those individuals that were running. California still needs you. You have a platform, you have a voice. Many of you had thousands of people voting for you, which means that they went into voting locations and they basically invested in you, and they took this precious thing, this single vote, the most significant action they can take, and they entrusted you with it. Now, what did you do? What did you do with those hundreds or thousands of votes that you're, and in some cases, millions of votes? What did you do with those millions of votes, where millions of people or thousands of people or hundreds of people said, hey, here, I'm going to give you this, do something with it, do something meaningful with it. And they entrusted you with it, and you have an obligation to them to fulfill your promise.
I 100% agree with you. And it really kind of sickened me a little bit. And maybe it's just because I'm Puerto Rican, but I was fired up about just the fact that so many people, exactly what you said, people got behind all these candidates. People really believed and fought for these candidates. I mean, we fought online every single day, nonstop, 24 hours a day, middle of the night. We fought tooth and nail. It was blood, sweat, and tears for months fighting for the candidates that we believed in. And those people, those candidates, like you said, they got this beautiful bowl full of people that just entrusted them and voted for them. And then after the recall was over, they literally just set it down and walked away. They just set it down and walked away. I didn't see them at a board meeting. I didn't see them at a rally. I didn't see them fighting for parental rights anymore. I saw a couple little tweets, but why weren't they standing on the front lines with us, fighting our county supervisors? Why aren't they standing on the front lines with us at our Board of Education meetings? You know, that's one thing that we appreciated so much about you, Anthony, is that you were standing on the front lines, and you even, now I want to segue into your organization that you sort of started, or your group that you started. We Are Still Heroes. And that's something that you that blossomed from your gubernatorial run, and you seeing everybody that was let go, the frontline workers and the heroes that were let go of their jobs because of the vaccine mandate. Can you please tell everybody a little bit about how you started that, why, and what you've been doing with We Are Still Heroes?
Sure. So after the recall, I was searching for ways to still remain in this fight, right? So obviously we were still going to campaign, but so many things were happening. And that's when we started to see news of, for me, it started with a report from New York saying that 72,000 nurses were going to be fired. And what struck a chord with me is that I vividly remember being in 2020, watching the news and seeing nurses that were getting off their shift or coming onto their shift have to walk through hundreds of people that were cheering them on. Like there were candlelight vigils in front of hospitals as nurses came and went, because we were calling them heroes. Like, wow, these are the best of us. They're going in, they're fighting this disease, with this virus. We don't know what it is. They could be taking it home to their family. They could be putting themselves at risk. They don't know, we don't have enough information to know what it is, but these people are going in every single day and caring for our weakest. And so I remember that, and to think that New York was going to be the first place that was going to announce mass terminations of people who were non-compliant with the vaccine was just appalling. Then a couple of days later, I found out that California was doing the same thing, but then other reports started to trickle up. But it's going to be teachers and firefighters and police officers and military. And I was like, what the hell's going on? This is crazy. And a lot of these individuals were posting online, talking about their stories. I don't know what I'm going to do. This is, I spent my entire life wanting to be a firefighter, police officer in the military. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to eat. I have a family. I said, you know what? We have to build a community. I knew that so much more needed to be done, but immediately I thought, first and foremost, let's get everybody together. Let's get everybody into a community where we could at least identify each other and get them some much needed support, prayer, whatever. And so I started We Are Still Heroes for the purpose of just building a community, getting people together to say, hey guys, know each other, find each other, share stories with each other, lean on each other. And so being that I run an ad agency, I thought, okay, well, how can I use the resources that are available to me in an innovative way that nobody can do, that's unique to me? Because I believe we all have to fight these battles with the resources and tools that God has given us all individually. So I looked and I said, okay, well, why don't I do this? Why don't I build an ad campaign and really use it as a jumping off point to get the message out? So I took what was the most popular ad of 2020, the campaign, which was the Dove campaign, which is courage is beautiful. It was Dove highlighting all of these nurses and saying courage is beautiful, and it won more awards than any other campaign in 2020. I said, that's it. How beautiful is this? And we created the tagline, courage is still beautiful, even if unvaccinated. And it was just flipping the script on this concept. So we did a series of ads, and I used my own money, and I took an ad, a full page ad in every major newspaper in California, and the 4 major newspapers that pretty much cover the entire state. And they accepted our money, and they reviewed our ads. And going into that Sunday, we were green light. We were about to launch a statewide campaign for We Are Still Heroes, get the word out. 2 of the 4 papers actually ran the ad. 2 of the papers pulled the ad the night before. The LA Times pulled it, and San Diego pulled it. But it ran in OC Register, and it ran in the San Francisco Chronicle. And it was a coming out party for all of those people who were wrongly terminated and were discriminated against because of their vaccine status. And from that, we built a community that now spans 10 states. There are 10 states that are represented. It's growing constantly. We get stories from all over. We've interviewed and done little documentaries of these individuals, these heroes who have been unfairly discriminated against. And we're just bringing light and people together. We did our first job fair in Temecula a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago now. And we brought all these individuals together. We brought, I think it was like 50 companies came, including In-N-Out, who said, we want to stand with our heroes. We want to offer support, resources, legal resources, job opportunities. And it was a job fair. Families came out. We had an opportunity to engage with these individuals, get them plugged in. And it's just continuing to grow. And so a lot of these organizations that are out there now, Firefighters for Freedom and Roll Call for Freedom, they're all interconnected now, and kind of, it's created this web of connectivity. And it's just amazing. But it was really my way of saying, hey, I legitimately want to help. I have to help. I've been called to help. And looking at the resources I had to say, hey, there's a need here. I'm going to step in and I'm going to do something. And honestly, like, I never even tied that to the campaign. It wasn't even about the campaign. It was a knee-jerk reaction to do something, to bring people together and to get involved. And
And it
I
was
think
beautiful.
more of us need to do that.
It was beautiful. We've been watching the ads, and what you've been doing with that is an absolutely beautiful. I mean, the pictures are gorgeous. They're just raw and real.
Yeah.
That's what I love about them. And the messaging is on point, and that's what you're known for. Now, before I let Toro kind of chime in, if he has any questions, even though he's in Virginia and doesn't really have a dog in this fight, he's a very intelligent man. Before I let him, speaking of messaging and advertising, I wanted to quickly allow you to speak on some controversy here in Southern California with messaging and advertising when it comes to Traffic, your company. There was obviously a little bit of controversy I've just been seeing here and there online, and it's about something about a contract that somebody hired your company for, and people are saying that it was a pro-vaccine contract. And so I'd like you to speak on that before we head up to Brother Toro.
Yeah, absolutely. Controversy in California, never. What are you talking about, man? Never. So in my business, we get awarded contracts from various municipalities, cities, counties, states, and obviously private entities. The one that you're talking about in particular is the County of Riverside hired 2 different agencies to basically run a campaign for them. One agency was hired for creative services and one was for media services. So the difference, for those of you that don't know, media services means that you're basically buying ad time, whether it's TV, radio, or print. You're buying the actual real estate, or you're buying and securing and negotiating the placement in the newspaper, or the placement on Facebook, or the placement on TV, etc. So as a media buying entity, you don't have anything to do with the creative. You're basically just representing the client with regards to buying media. The creative agency, on the other hand, is fully responsible for messaging, for imagery, and for the creative assets part of it. Traffic was not hired for the creative part of what we're talking about. Traffic was hired as the media agency. And so we don't even have anything to do with creative. The creative gets developed, the creative gets fleshed out with the client, and then the creative comes to us for placement. The campaign that we were hired to do and what we were involved with was an awareness campaign. So that's what it was, a PSA, public service announcement, basically giving people information on where to get vaccines if you want to get vaccines. It was not a pro-vaccine campaign. We were not involved in creative. It was just a public awareness campaign. And by the way, public awareness is very much consistent with my platform and where I stand. I believe that the public should be fully aware and educated on all of their options. I'm not taking a personal stance on being pro or against vaccines. I am against mandates. And so what happened was the creative was developed, and then obviously we were contracted for the ad placement. But right around the same time, the I don't know who the executive director was within the county, was told about me and who I am and my position, and basically looked at my talking points and felt like I was on the side of being completely anti-vaccination. He felt it was a conflict of interest, and they terminated us. And so we lost a significant size contract. Upwards of $500,000 based on the fact that they determined us to be incompatible with their views. I could have easily backtracked. I could have easily made a public statement. I could have done any number of things, but I agreed that if they were going to look at anything I've said during the campaign and identify that as being anti-vaccination, then obviously they're not thinking logically. They're not actually listening to what I'm saying, and it's better that we don't have that type of partnership. So we allowed it to end and terminate. We didn't fight for it, and we've been separated. But like I said,
time that's happened to you, right? That's not the first time that's
happened.
No. You've
lost
a lot of. You've lost quite a bit of business, from what I understand, because you are on the side of freedom and choice instead of mandates and pushing.
People basically have identified the middle as really being anti-vaccination. No one who is forcing the vaccinations are allowing any space to have any opposing view other than anti-vax. apparently in their view, if you're not 100% for mandates, then you're immediately put into a bucket of anti-vaccination. Even if your position is, no. If you want the vaccine, get the booster, get the second booster, get the third. If you want a fifth, a fourth, fifth, they're not allowing anybody to have any other narrative than mandates are good for public safety. And if you have any other talking point other than mandates are essential, then they put you into this bucket. But I've never said I was anti-vaccination. I never said I was pro-vaccination. I am very, very much anti-mandate. And so it's this weird narrative that they want to conjure up, and anybody that stands for freedom, anyone that stands for choice, is getting put into this bucket, and that's their talking point, that you must be anti-vaccination. Then it's like, where's the logic in that?
That's what the left does, brother. The left always does that.
Welcome to politics. Welcome.
Yeah.
We welcome you. We've got silver platters of hors d'oeuvres for you to chew on and
yes, I know.
choke on, and all kinds of nasty things in this world. But we appreciate you being in the fight, because we need more like you. And I'm going to go ahead and see if Toro has any interesting questions.
Yeah. You know, I always do. But yo, I followed you for a while now, even when you were in the recall. And definitely Carmen go hard for you. I seen her in the comment sections and everything. So you know what
she's
I'm saying?
She's
a writer.
Right there. Yeah, she's my sister. Yeah.
Yeah. Back to what you were
Puerto
saying.
Ricans and Cuban, they, you know, they just
definitely
they go.
Y'all
got
spicy.
That Caribbean blood going from down there.
Yeah, y'all spicy, definitely. But back to what you were saying earlier about you not having a political career. I mean, I might, you know, when you turn California around, I mean, I think it's good enough said that we want you as a president as well. So you might have to hold back on those thoughts a little bit.
Well, let's go there mentally for a second and say that happened. That would still only be an 8-year term. There are literally people that have been in politics for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It's absolutely insane. There's no connectivity to the generations that came behind them. So I don't think anybody should hold office for that long. But as long as there's a need, and as long as I'm continue to be obedient. So we'll see what happens. Right now, California needs saving, and that's my focus.
Definitely.
And Toro, his wife doesn't want to have to move to Florida, so she's really hoping that we can turn California around.
Absolutely.
Definitely. One more thing too, like, you know, we just had a big race here in Virginia. I don't know if you've heard of it. You know, a lot of us came united, you know, and voted for Glenn Youngkin. He finally got elected. You know, and he kind of let us down. He kind of let us down a little bit. I mean, you can see the people he's electing as, you know, education secretary, a bunch of these things, you know, like, how are you going to reassure, you know, your voters that, you know, you won't turn out to be a Glenn Youngkin per se?
Sure. So I started my company 20 years ago. Very humble beginnings. My wife and I did not have much. We were happy with what we had, but we didn't have much. I built that company up over 20 years. It's now one of the fastest growing companies in America. You don't get there by not doing what you say you're going to do. You don't get there by not having character and integrity. You don't get there. Like we do business with some of the most fierce, dominant companies in the world and the nation. And they hold you accountable. They hold you to your word. And, you know, the minute you slip, you get terminated. So I'm used to an environment where you do exactly what you say you're going to do. You be integral, honorable. And honestly, I have absolutely no interest in doing anything but what I'm talking about. And, you know, this whole campaign is built on the shoulders of other people who have put so much work in over years. I'm the tip of the spear, but the spear is long, and it's, you know, I owe a lot of people who have encouraged me and inspired me to do what's right. But that's kind of also where faith comes in. You know, I have a lot of people tell me, Keep your faith to yourself. Stop bringing church into this. Stop bringing God into this. You're never going to get elected on a campaign that you know, where you're bringing God into the conversation. This is California, whatever. And I'm like, I don't care what religion you are. I don't care if you're atheist, agnostic, Muslim, Hindu. I honestly don't care. If you're going to elect someone into office, though, you should care. You should care about where, you know, where they're anchored at, where their morals and their values come from. And as a Christian, you know, I'm called to love everyone as I love myself, which means everybody who has opposing views from me religiously and in how they live their life. And so I answer to a higher calling, right? I ran my campaign, Faith, Family, Freedom, and it's in that order. I made a commitment to my God, I made a commitment to my family, and I made a commitment to everybody who would elect me. Then I'm going to do exactly what I said I'm going to do. And honestly, going in there and doing anything but that is of absolute no interest to me. I'd rather be in Florida than to get into office and do anything other than what I said I was going to do. So, and honestly, a year into it, if I haven't done the job that I said I was going to do, I'll gladly recall myself.
Good answer. Good answer.
All right. Well, brother, I wanted to ask you a question. Over here, an article came out the other day, said that Gavin Newsom, by 2024, he's going to make it where all illegals can receive health care over here. That's just totally ridiculous. I wanted to get your thoughts on that, and also, like, for those who don't know you, about your thoughts on, like, border security.
So that's how socialism and communism creep into our state and ultimately our country. Putting that unnecessary tax burden on the middle class is completely absurd. Gavin Newsom wants to reinvent all the rules. He wants California to be the abortion capital of the nation. He wants it to be a sanctuary state. He wants us to have to carry the burden of not only being the place where we allow for people to come into our country illegally, but now we're going to give them all the rights and the freedoms and the benefits on the shoulders of hardworking individuals and taxpayers. And so, you know, my belief is always, as an immigrant, I'm 50% Mexican, 50% Cuban, right? But I was born here. So I'm 100% American. I understand how important and significant it is that you know, our history and culture and how we're a melting pot. And I do believe that California and the United States needs to be a welcoming place. But we are also a country and a state of laws. My grandparents came here legally, and I believe that we need to have very strong border control, and we need to ensure that we're not putting unnecessary burden on our taxpayers. Illegal immigration isn't good for anybody, especially the Hispanic community here in California. Single payer is not good for the Hispanic community and the minority communities here in California. So it's just a way for him to appeal to people he thinks will ultimately keep him in office.
Exactly. That's what they're even over there in New York trying to say that that illegals can vote.
They already did.
Can vote.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're over there, and he said that they're going to try. He's saying they want to try to do it out here. So we know the Democrats. We know their game plan. They just cheat. They do anything to get to win, for power. They just do anything and everything slimy. So I don't know how anybody could vote for them. But also, like you said, the main ones affected by illegals is legal, like immigrants. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference between an illegal and an immigrant. There's a difference. You know what I'm saying? Like, every country in the world protects their border. You know what I mean? So, and then two, there's so many hard-working Americans, even that paying taxes and all that have to pay and all that for their own insurance and don't even have insurance or whatever. But then just shows the Democrats' minds, instead of focusing on that or the home or whatever situation, is to illegals again. They're just, and then see, that's what they try to do. Their game plan: open borders, and then for you guys to vote. You know what I mean? So wake up, anybody. You don't see what's going on.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. But go ahead, Carmen.
Speaking of voting, I know that Anthony, you were one of the few candidates, or maybe the only candidate that I saw actually working on voter integrity. And in fact, you were working with the Integrity Project. And I wanted you to speak a little bit more about that. Are you still working on that? Are you concerned about election integrity right now after what happened with the recall? We know that there were some shenanigans. We can argue about that and go in circles with everybody all day long. We know that there were definitely some shenanigans. Now that we have universal mail-in voting, and you can print your own ballot at home, or at least you could on the weekend. That was insane, absolute insanity. How are things going, you think, as far as election integrity? Have we made any strides? Are you still kind of working on that or concerned about that? Give us your thoughts.
Yeah. It's probably one of the questions I get asked most frequently right after they say, "Hey, I love what you're about. I want to vote for you." But what are you going to do about my vote? What are you going to do about election integrity? The truth of the matter, the unfortunate truth is, until somebody gets in the office and actually performs an audit, we're not going to truly fix the problem. Okay, that's the bad news. The good news, though, is we still have to vote, because what they want is they want to discourage you to the point where you just throw in the towel and you no longer vote. They want to just beat you down to submission to say, I've lost all faith in the voting system, therefore I'm not going to vote. But ultimately, even in Virginia, you guys had Dominion machines there, and he was still able to pull off that win. So look, at the end of the day, here's what we need to do. Not get discouraged and still need to vote. But the question that I ask everybody who says, hey, what are you going to do about election integrity? The question I ask is twofold. What are you going to do about election integrity? And have you ever volunteered? And have you ever volunteered? Because this is a heavy lift. It's statewide. There's not one single individual that's going to solve voter integrity until you put someone in office and he does it from the inside or she does it from the inside. But until then, it's a statewide effort by every one of us. So every single person that asks me, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, what are you going to do? And are you going to volunteer this time? 100% of the people that I've asked, hey, have you ever volunteered? Have you ever participated? Have you ever stood watch? Have you ever got involved? They say no. I say, okay, well, that's where you can start. You can start by connecting with the Election Integrity Project of California. They'll give you all the information you need to understand the 8 various points in the voting process where something could go wrong, how you can get involved in several of those, how you can volunteer, how you can get behind some of the lawsuits that are happening. But what we need to do is we need to get involved, and we need to be at all of those voting locations. Churches need to step up, collect ballots from their congregations, and then drive them in and submit them, and be part of that process. We just need to do a better job of getting involved. We can't just be complaining about it. We have to be there. We have to be watching. The Democrats are super good at being involved and controlling that part of the process. And conservatives and Republicans and everyone else, even independents, you got to get way more involved. And so find out. I would urge people to go to the Integrity Project of California, Election Integrity Project of California, and find ways in which you can plug yourself in and get involved. We're going to need everybody to come out, not only to vote, but to ensure that you can be part of the voting process. We're not going to eliminate problems, but we can minimize them.
Amen. Well, thank you for that. I mean, and you're right. I mean, I've never volunteered at a voting center. I didn't even realize we had so many issues until the last couple of years. I was in the dark like so many people. I think most of us are learning as we go, right? We're sort of just riding this political crazy wave, and
look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I was getting message after message, DMs and texts on voting day, September 14th, of people that were showing me video of them looking at their ballot and my name wasn't on it in some cases, or showing up to vote and being told you've already voted, like video after video. So like, it's undeniable that the system is broken. So we need to get involved to ensure that as much as possible, we can have oversight to make it very, very difficult for those people that want to corrupt the process to operate.
Yeah, I really appreciate that sentiment. And I think this election cycle, this election year, I think I'm going to push personally very, very hard for everybody to get involved in that process and make sure that they're overseeing, because people will only get, take as much as you let them, right? If if you give people an inch and they take a mile, well, you got to stop them from taking that mile. You got to prevent the corruption from happening. This is where people need to step into their power, step into their faith, and step into their self-confidence and say, you know what? I can do something that I've never done before. It might hurt a little bit. It might sting a little bit. It might be unknown and scary, but I can do it. And people need to step out of their comfort zone and start figuring out how to get involved. And so many times people ask me, how do I get involved? How do I do this? How do I do that? And then I will go and have to look it up for them or figure it out, right? But really, we need every single person to kind of go and do the research themselves and start really figuring out the nuts and bolts. I'll give you an analogy. When I opened up a restaurant once in Laguna Beach, and the manager saw my resume, and it was going to be a hot nightclub restaurant called Club M, Mosun and Club M. It was like the hottest sushi place. It was going to be. Do you remember that place? It was right.
No, but it sounds awesome.
It was, yeah. So it was Mosun Sushi and Club M upstairs. So it was a poppin' nightclub upstairs, and we had this super popular, expensive sushi bar downstairs. And it was the hottest place in Laguna Beach to go, and one of the few places in Orange County to go. But the manager, the manager had asked me, saw my resume and asked me if I wanted to start like as a manager, and I said, no, I want to start at the lowest position that I can possibly start in this business. And I want to learn every facet of this restaurant and club. And so that therefore you see, first of all, that I'm dedicated. And second of all, I can do everything. And so I started as a food runner, and I started running the food to the tables. And guess what happened? I was the only person that knew the menu and knew the food as good as I did, right? And then I went up to the next level. And then I was a waitress. And then I went up to manager, and I could make drinks. And then I was club managing and all this stuff. By the end of it, I could do anything from A to Z in the restaurant, and I knew it front and back. But if you don't start at the bottom and learn it yourself and figure it out, and somebody just sticks you in a position, you don't ever know anything about what everybody else in that restaurant or entity or organization is going through, right? You have no idea. So unless you insert yourself into the situation and really start Googling, whatever, DuckDuckGoing, whatever you want to, and start going down to your, city offices and figuring it out for yourself, you're always going to have questions like, oh, I don't know how to do this and that. Just start somewhere, right? Even if it's at the bottom, it's okay. And then you'll figure things out, and you will be an asset. If you want to be an asset, you will be an asset somewhere. That's what I keep telling people. I think we should hammer that message home over and over and over again this election cycle, and just get droves of people to volunteer. And maybe we can have a free and fair election in California and get somebody like Anthony in, right? Maybe, right? So that's my hope. I mean, I think that's the message too.
The biggest issue, to your point, with the Hispanic community and the minority community is that most people don't know where to start, so they don't start.
Yeah.
And that's what the institution wants, right? To keep the minority communities unaware and uneducated. I mean, that is literally their biggest tool, is minimizing the amount of education that the Hispanic community gets. Because if you have a Hispanic community that's equipped, knowledgeable, they understand their power, how to use their power, how to get involved, how to get engaged, they would put every governor in office, every president in DC. It's just, we don't, the community at large just doesn't know where to start, so they don't start, and it's intimidating. That's why so many don't register to vote, so many don't vote, because they just don't understand the process. So we need to really educate all the minority communities and say, look, do you know the power that you have?
Yeah.
Start. You got to get involved.
That's
so hopefully we can do a lot of that. Yeah.
We say it all the time. I say it, and Jesse, I've never heard Jesse say this, but I say it all the time, that I feel that Lexit Movement is the most important movement to the Republic of America. because if we could get all of the Latinos in America, and there's lots, and they like to have more babies, lots of babies, so they're growing. So there's so many Latinos, like what Anthony just said, that if we could get the Latinos to understand what they're actually voting for and empower them, and to get them to understand that their faith should be a part of their voting system. Don't pull it out of your vote. Don't pull your faith out and vote for anything. You need to vote with your morals. If we voted with our morals, we could keep our country moral. It's a very simple concept, right? So I truly believe that the Lexit movement is the most important movement to every Black, white, Latino, Asian, purple, pink, I don't care what color you are. It's the most important movement to everyone in America who has conservative values. And if we could literally keep a red or conservative person in office in every state, and our president as well, if we could just get the Latinos to vote with our faith and morals. That's it. It's so simple. What do you have to say, Toro?
Yeah, I actually wanted to say something. So you were saying it was hard for us to start, right? You got to just start. And it's kind of extreme. It's extra harder for the Hispanic community or the minority community, period. Because a lot of minorities look down upon other minorities that vote red or vote for the other side. I think I think you're absolutely correct. I think Lexit is very important because we need to, think free, tell the community, think free, think, I like Jesse says, I don't know why Hispanics even vote Democrat. I know it's probably just because of immigration policy, but that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
There's really nothing else that the left have in common with these communities because they're all, conservative. All Hispanic communities have conservative values. You're either a Catholic or Pentecostal or, something. So I think you're right, Carmen. It's definitely Lexit is important. And it's definitely harder for for the Hispanic community to come out there. And also, I want to give a shout out to the Cuban's daughter. She's also out here on Virginia. And she said the exact same thing you said. Because I remember on election day, I went to Glenn Youngkin's rally the night before, and I was too tired to, go volunteer or anything because you could basically just walk there and volunteer on the outskirts. In order to be inside, yeah, you had to have the email confirmation and all that. And, she told me the same thing. And after she told me, she called me out too. She said, well, how do you want, how is anything going to change if you're not out here, watching the booth? She skipped out on the Glenn Youngkin rally because, she was focused on being a poll watcher. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, shout
That's
out to
commitment,
Cuban's
yeah.
daughter. Yeah. She
Yeah.
definitely opened my eyes there.
Also, Anthony, I want to talk about, to me though, because you're at Lexit, we keep it real. We call it 100. We call both sides. And we call it out. We're even gonna say Trump if he was doing something we don't like. But we want to call this the GOP. To me, I feel they dropped the ball a lot with the recall and all that. Because to me, I didn't see them do nearly enough. They weren't doing pretty much anything I seen was coming from like us and other grassroots and other candidates doing for their own. But I didn't really see too much of the GOP doing that much. So I'm really hoping that they'll wake up, or I don't know what, just to call with them, because to me, the Democrats are just a disaster.
I say that all the time. The California GOP is on life support. It needs to be revived. It needs to be rebranded. It needs to look different, talk different, act different, walk different. If it's going to survive, when I spent months and months and months going up and down the state at GOP events and rallies and speaking in front of audiences. And it's like the majority of the time I was sitting in front of people that, like, the youngest person was probably 50. And that's not to say anything toward our older generation, but if you're
pushing 50.
No, but I'm saying the youngest, I'm saying they got up there. I'm saying that if you're not inspiring generation after generation, then your party's going to die off, right? And so the Democrats do a good job of, they're activating, teenagers and 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds. They have a deep bench, right? But the GOP doesn't have a deep bench. The GOP it's surviving off of its members who are just, they need a resurgence, and they need a revival within the party. And I truly believe that the future of the California GOP is going to be an audience of people who look like us right here, and
Exactly.
our children,
We say that all the time, brother.
You know?
Is that they don't seem, they only want you if you're a suit and tie, went to Harvard. It seems like that they be like that because we don't, even us, Lexit, we don't hear from them nearly enough, and they just totally. I know so many people are just rare because the Democrats are handing it over on a silver platter. They're just destroying America. They're like totally falling apart. People want to leave. They don't like what the Democrats and all that are doing, but yet, and then the Republicans are just not doing nothing over there. That's why we need to put. That's why. And then when
they don't think
good
about
candidates, they don't back the good candidates. They back some other rhino that nobody likes, or like they're out of touch with the people.
So perfect point. Out of touch with the people, which means that you've lost connectivity with your target audience, right? The GOP isn't approaching it like every company on the planet, and all of our clients. If they were in a market and they just kept losing market share year after year after year, they're losing market share, they're having their butts handed to them. It's simple. Any good marketer would sit down and say, we need to re-strategize, we need to rebrand, we need to reconnect with our consumer. So let's find out what our consumers want. Let's find out what their triggers are, what matters to them. And let's make sure that our brand looks more like the consumers that are going to support the company. And then you go back to market after a lot of research, and you put yourself out there and you become relevant again. But the GOP has not taken the time to say, we continue to lose. We continue to, we continue to lose not only in elections, but we continue to lose our base. What do we need to do to restructure, rebrand, remessage our party to ensure that it will exist 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now? And that's why I'm hoping that we'll be able to sit down at the table with them and say, hey, you want an opportunity to rebrand the party? You want an opportunity to re-engage? You want an opportunity to inspire the next generation? This campaign needs to be the face of what the GOP looks like in 2022, because this group here is a reflection of the diversity that exists in California, and we are the future of the GOP here. And they need to understand that, and they need to embrace it, because that's what people are thirsty for. And if you don't give it to them, they're going to find somebody, right, who talks in a manner that is compelling to them and motivating to them and encouraging, even if it's wrong. That's the problem, even if it's wrong. So we just disconnected with our base. Yeah.
So we know that you're pro-life, you're pro-traditional family, you're a man of God, and you're pro-Second Amendment, all that. But before we close and before we end, so the people that don't know you or whatever, why should people vote for you and then not Gavin Newsom? Like, what's bad about Gavin Newsom?
Well, we need another show for that one.
That's a whole loaded question right there. Bottom line is that if you look at California today is not the state that you want to leave to your children, right? We are not better off. We are not safer. We are not better off financially. There's an attack on the nuclear family. There's an attack on churches. There's an attack on businesses. There's an attack on your freedoms and your liberties. This is not the California that my grandfather left Cuba to pursue. This is not the California I grew up in. This is not the California I want to leave to my children. Newsom has been in office as mayor, as lieutenant governor, and as governor for over a decade. What we are seeing in California is a reflection of his leadership, plain and simple. There are two laboratories in the United States for the Biden administration to test all of his new policies. It's New York and California. And if you look at New York and California, and California specifically, you have more people leaving California than ever in the history of the state. You have rising crime, rising homelessness. You have an agricultural industry that's collapsing on itself. You have people rallying in the streets just wanting simple, basic rights over their own bodies. There's an attack on our children at schools, critical race theory, mandates that don't make any scientific sense. They're unconstitutional. This is not the California that any of us want to live in. And the American dream is on life support. I believe that I represent I represent the American dream that we grew up knowing. Immigrant, heritage and roots. I'm as diverse, and I reflect the diversity that exists here in California. But also, California is the 6th largest economy on the planet. We don't just need a governor; we need a CEO. And I built a company from scratch, from nothing, to one of the fastest growing companies in America, and I did so in the height of a pandemic while my entire industry was collapsing. If I can navigate those waters, stand on biblical principle, advocate for our children, fight for small business, then I can turn things around. It's going to take, a monumental effort, grassroots effort, to all get behind this. And I think that, we stand for the change that we all want to see in California. And I'm not a politician, so I'm not going to go in there and act like a politician, look like a politician. I'm a father, a Christian, a businessman with a heart for California. And I don't have to be here doing this, but I want to. And I'll end with this. It's kind of like the house was burning and I ran out. I made it to the curb and I could have kept going, but I looked back and I saw that there were too many people still in the house. So I ran back into the fire. And so I'm determined to save as many people as I can before this building collapses on itself. And hopefully we can save the structure and rebuild something better.
Amen.
Amen.
And I want to tell everybody real quick before we go, I was with Anthony at the Freedom Revival event this weekend, this Saturday. And, he seems very mellow and even keel, but he brought the fire to that stage and he really ignited a fire in the 10,000 people that came to have their fire ignited. He was able to inspire them big time. And I was so proud of you, my friend, for that amazingly
Thank you.
inspirational speech. And I think everybody felt it. And I think you felt it. And I think you were inspired. And everybody else there was inspired by you. And so, some people have said, Anthony's so mellow and everything, but you don't know. He's got that Cuban little flame in there that just ignites and it turns on when it wants to. But he really brought it. If you haven't seen his speech yet from this weekend, you should definitely go watch it. But it's more faith and fury. It's not as much of politics, because he's about faith first. So I don't know if you want to say one last thing in closing.
Yeah, it's funny. I people that don't know me are the only ones that would say something like that, because everyone that knows me understands the fire that lives in here. In fact, my wife is constantly trying to tame the fire, the anger, and the frustration that I'm feeling. I'm talking with family right now, so it's casual, but at the end of the day, I'm pissed and I'm angry that I even have to fight this fight. I'm pissed and I'm angry that parents have to stand outside of school boards and advocate for the safety of their children. I'm pissed that as a business owner, it's not a good environment for me. I'm pissed that so many businesses are collapsing, industries are collapsing here in California. I'm pissed that if my grandfather was here, he'd want to consider going somewhere else other than California, and he fled Cuba, right? I'm pissed that we're entertaining socialism and communism here when I have family back there that don't have even basic rights. No, I'm pissed, and that's why I do this every single day. And Newsom needs to be fired, and I'm going to be the one to do it.
Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you so much, brother. Anybody who want to volunteer or you want to donate, just go to anthonytrimino.com. And thank you so much. See you guys later.
Godspeed.
Appreciate you guys.